Hey everybody, I don't know if it keeps saying preparing, but sometimes it'll say preparing even when
Right,
we're already live. So there we
right.
are. All right. Hello everybody again. Thank you for joining us on the Healing Place podcast live presentations and discussions about pandemic self-care. And yeah, I'm super excited to have with me Mary Giuliani. So welcome, Mary.
Well, thank you, Terry, for having me.
Yeah, the audience a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Well, I have been involved with the trauma-informed community now for several years. After being on a personal growth path for about 30 years, I'm a master life coach, and I didn't realize that I even had trauma until about 3 years ago, since my upbringing was really more emotional abuse and neglect. And so once I realized that I had trauma and that my brain and body had been impacted, as well as my psychological health, that's when I really got into being a coach for people with trauma, as well as regular business and personal coaching. So I'm really committed to raising consciousness about how people that are raised in toxically stressful childhoods, whether it's physical, sexual, or emotional abuse, all have an impact on their brain, body, and mind, and that brain, body, and mind therapies are really necessary for full healing, not just psychological help.
Yeah,
So,
and we just discussed before we went live, and I think it's so critical to talk about how this pandemic and all that's happening worldwide, I mean, this is global,
right,
is going to create some triggering for people that just have no clue that they grew up in or experienced
absolutely.
trauma.
Well, yeah, I mean, like I said, I didn't realize that I knew I grew up in a dysfunctional family, but I would have never considered myself to be a traumatized child. And so, what I now know about trauma is that when part of being traumatized is that you're in an environment that you're trapped in and that you can't get out. I remember feeling like I was trapped in the family from hell. And, um, and so now here we are, quarantined, in a sense, trapped. And then we've got leadership from our federal government and president that is not compassionate, that's not empathetic. And so it's like you're feeling like you're in this trapped environment with somebody that you really can't trust. And I'm sure it brings up so much trauma for so many people. And when we get triggered in our trauma, our stress response in our body and brain and mind gets triggered, and then we get anxious, and then we're reliving our childhood trauma, much less the same trauma that we're going through in the present time.
Yeah, well, and certainly feeling financial constraints and, job
Absolutely.
insecurities and what's going to happen and all of those what ifs.
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
And then we have this 24/7 news cycle too, and so it just keeps that cortisol stress response running through our bodies and minds. And so unless you have an awareness of how your brain and body and mind work, it's easy to just keep on hurting yourself, in a sense, through exposing yourself to this kind of stress. And so really my goal is to help everybody be mindful of what's going on in their brain, body, and mind, and some steps they can take to keep themselves regulated and calm down to the best,
yeah,
as much as possible given the
yeah.
circumstances.
So can you walk us through a little bit what happens in that mind body
Sure.
relationship, is particularly when triggered?
Sure. Well, as an organism, as a human species, we're wired to be on alert for threat. And so when we feel threatened, well, let's face it, this is a life-threatening disease. I mean, so we're naturally going to be hyper vigilant to being infected. And so there's that piece of it, as well as our family members, as well as our friends, and just humanity as a whole. So there's that piece that is going to trigger our nervous systems to go into a fight, flight, freeze mode. And then there's the economical, the economy of, the job, our income is stopped, and what that means, and just the uncertainty of it all. And so there's all this stuff going on, that's uncertainty, that's and then triggering trauma from your childhood, being in an environment where you don't feel like you're being taken care of, and you can't trust whoever is leading your family to really take care of you. So So there's all this potential for a lot of stress, and there's this acronym called SAD, SAD, which is stress, anxiety, depression. So what happens in a brain and body and mind is when it's stressed enough, especially people with childhood trauma, because people with childhood trauma or shock trauma are more susceptible to being emotionally triggered, and we stay triggered longer. But the point is that when we're stressed continuously, we end up getting anxious. And then when we're anxious continuously, our nervous system can shut down and go into depression. And so that's why it's really important to take care of your brain and your mental health as well as your emotional health. A lot of people, I don't think, realize that emotional health and brain health, they are connected, but they are separate as well. And so I want to talk a little bit about what we can do to keep ourselves regulated as possible.
Yes.
So the first thing is just to be mindful instead of just being in this reactive mode of just watching the news or scrolling through Facebook, and there's all this, just sort of panicky and negative stuff, and not so just being mindful of what's really going on. Well, we are in a crisis, and so just recognizing that, wow, this is really happening. This is really scary. Just acknowledging your feelings can actually have an impact at calming you down. So in other words, just by being in denial of it, or just by not acknowledging it all, it actually stresses you out more. So just acknowledging that, this is hard. I'm scared. I'm fearful. There's a lot of grief and loss going on. We don't have the status quo anymore, and there's a comfort in knowing what's going to happen every day. So we've lost the rhythm and routine of our regular lives, and so there's loss, and that can trigger a lot of complicated grief from people that haven't dealt with some grief too. So there's that going on. So just being mindful, and then finding safe people to process that with. And what I mean by that is actual interactive live conversations. If you can't do it in person, it's not a family member, find somebody on the phone that you can actually have a conversation with versus texting or emailing or Facebooking or whatever. Because as humans, we need the rhythmic back and forth, looking at each other, seeing that you're smiling when I'm talking or getting me. We need to be seen. And when we're seen and feel like people get us and empathize with us, it calms down our nervous system. It's called co-regulation. We actually co-regulate each other as humans. So we really do need, the best, of course, is in person, but given our social distancing, Facebook, FaceTime or Zoom or Skype is a great way to do that. And so I really recommend everybody have at least 1 or 2 human contacts in real time per day. Again, not in person per se, but over FaceTime or over Zoom or over the phone or something. Because again, that's what helps us co-regulate each other.
Yeah.
The other thing is reorienting our focus. So it's really easy just to get caught in this. And I noticed myself just like, oh my God, I'm in this reactive freeze mode. I could feel it.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, okay, because as human beings, we're oriented to look for the next threat. And so we're going to be drawn to be watching the news or looking it up on Google or whatever. It's just, it's natural to feel like I want to find out what's going on all the time, because that's what we feel like is going to make us safe. But the truth is that we really only need to check in maybe a couple times a day, maybe 15 minutes max. So getting mindful about consuming the news versus letting it consume you. And being mindful of when you are consuming news, how you're feeling in your body.
Yeah.
I mean, I have noticed that when I start watching, I just feel this sort of tightening and this sort of anxiety feeling. And then it's like, Mary, you've got to walk away,
Right.
even though my fight, flight, freeze brain wants to look more like maybe the next snippet of news is going to make me feel like I know more. It's typically just very repetitive news. And so letting the news be a support versus a detriment is really, really important.
For sure. I just put a post out yesterday
Yeah.
that was maybe yesterday or the day before, it was stop and be. And it was my own, how I worked through some of my trauma. But it's applicable now, because if you can stop and be and recognize, yes, how am I feeling? Am I feeling scared? Am I feeling joy? And
Yeah,
there's almost a guilt about feeling joy, like
exactly. Yeah,
humor.
it's like survivor's guilt.
Yeah, and people are apologizing, oh, I know this is a serious situation, but this one made me laugh when they put out a funny meme on Facebook. Well, we have to laugh. It's okay to
Absolutely.
experience joy. It's okay to experience laughter and those
Right.
feelings of peace. And then I said, journal about it, write about it. But what you're saying
Exactly.
is even better, talk to somebody about it.
Absolutely. I mean, but journaling and writing is great too. Whatever it takes to get yourself to process through whatever you're feeling.
Yeah,
Because if we don't, especially people with trauma, we're going to find typically unhealthy behaviors that we adapted to as children. It's going to be food, it's going to be Facebooking, it's going to be alcohol or drugs or whatever. And, those are the things that, just aren't going to serve us. They're destructive. And so if we can process through this, this is a time to do it in a healthy way.
yeah. I just
Um,
for a second, I want to ask you a question about that, because I've seen a crazy amount of memes, and I know I am doing it too. But the jokes about, I'm going to weigh 400 pounds when this pandemic is over, and about how the eating, and a friend of mine reached out. She said to me, it may have been in response to something I'd put out, but it was along the lines of, it's almost as if I'm afraid somebody's going to come and take it away from me. And so I'm just
Absolutely.
eating the food, like hoarding it but into my body.
Absolutely. Well, like what's going on in the grocery stores, or, there's hardly any food on the shelves. And so, yeah, it's like at any moment I may need to go into complete quarantine because I've been exposed. And so, or if there's not going to be enough, or, many people were raised with food scarcity. And
Yeah.
so this is a trigger for them. And so to me, the the way to respond to that within yourself is to first start with compassion. It's like, oh honey, i
Yeah.
i remember, getting back to what is this triggering for me.
Right.
Was this triggering for me when I was a little kid and we had no money and we didn't have food, and so that's what I feel like I need to do. So having compassion for yourself, and that you're not alone, this is going on all over the world. And what is it that you need to feel safe? Maybe talking to your family members, your friends. Uh, Thank God for technology. We have telehealth, we have psychologists and psychiatrists and therapists that you can actually have sessions with over Skype or Zoom. Um, and so, not beating yourself up if you do overindulge. I mean, it's just trying to learn from what's going on. I use, as I've shared in my past with you and other people, I used to weigh over 300 pounds, so I know what it's like to use food to comfort myself. And yet I also know some some practices that I put in place that really help me not do that. And actually, I'm going to share one with you. I use a food app called My Net Diary, um, and it's great. It's free. It's something you can get on iOS or the Play Store, Google Play, and it's just a way for me to stay honest about what I'm putting in my body. And it's not a diet. I call it my self-loving food plan. And I have the kind of nervous system that needs that kind of support, because on my own, I just need that kind of support. And thank God, and I've been able to maintain my weight for many, many years as a result of having those kinds of structures in place. Um, but also building in treat days and that sort of thing too, so that you're not depriving yourself. But to me, the other thing that's really important is to create a um, a new focus on what you can control. Like right now, we're all feeling out of control, and so of course we are. We don't know what's going on.
Right.
So, as humans, we feel a lot calmer when we feel like we have agency, that we feel like we can, what can we control? And so for me, what I'm doing is taking this opportunity to go, okay, what can I control? Well, I started freaking out about my 401k. So what can I control? I'm going to call my financial person, just to have a
Yeah.
conversation. You know what I mean? And, instead of just being reactive and so I did that. I had 2 conversations with them. And so, what else can I do? Well, I'm going to update my website. I haven't had a chance to do that. And so there's things that you can control, or I'm going to implement a new outdoor walking thing that I've been wanting to do forever. And so again, those are things you can control, and they calm you down because then you feel like you have some agency.
Yeah.
Um, it's an opportunity to put some new, actually learn some new skills, upskill. This is an opportunity to learn the different software programs that you have been putting off because you've been so busy. And then you'll be more marketable after this is all over, and you can feel excited about being able to get another job or a better paying job or whatever. So again, let go of what you can't control to the best of your ability and do what you can. Like, make sure you apply for all the assistance that's out there.
Yeah.
Don't feel like you shouldn't apply for food assistance if because you have savings. Actually, food assistance is available to anybody that's not getting any income, no matter how much savings you have, or unemployment, or gig workers can access income from this new stimulus bill. So really writing down, and I think just taking the time instead of being reactive, because again, this crisis can put our brains into this sort of freeze mode where we just feel confused and overwhelmed, and we can't focus. And that's what, by the way, that's what fight, flight, freeze does. It turns our frontal lobe off, which is the part that has us be able to focus and make plans and regulate our emotions. And it puts us into this sort of, okay, what am I going to do to protect myself from dying? Let me watch the news,
Yeah.
And so again, if we're aware of that's the way the brain and nervous system works, we can stop that cycle. So again, be really mindful of your news. I would say set a 15-minute limit in the morning and the evening, really, like no kidding. If you've got people on Facebook that are upsetting you, block them, unfriend them.
It's true though.
It's
And
like,
you can just do that temporarily until,
yeah. Have boundaries. In other words, a lot of us as children, we didn't feel protected when we were growing up in our crazy homes. But now that we're adults, we can protect ourselves. And that's part of what's called what's it called? I'm sorry. It's a reorienting experience. So like, for example, having boundaries with people on Facebook, or having boundaries with people that want you to come out of your isolation to hang out with them, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I know, it's called a corrective experience. Part of healing trauma is having corrective experiences. So if you feel inclined, this is the opportunity to have a corrective experience. So again, write down the areas that you feel powerless around right now, and then write down the areas that you feel like you do have control over, and put some pieces in place for that. The other thing is I want to talk about some brain hygiene habits. Again, a lot of people don't realize that they can train their brains like they can train their bodies. And again, our brain really is in the driver's seat of our feelings, our states. Our brain is the thing that helps us fall asleep at night. It's the thing that helps us focus. It's the thing that helps us calm down. But if we have a brain that's just out of control, like the Buddha said, the brain is like a drunken monkey. And so, but the good news is that we can train it. And one of the things I learned in my trauma recovery was about neurofeedback. And I ended up buying my own neurofeedback system, and literally was blown away about how much calmer. I didn't even, it's like when you live in, if you've lived in the only brain you've ever lived in, you don't know that it can be different,
Right.
And so I was able to calm down my brain and like have a reset of my level of anxiety, so that I feel calmer and more comfortable with people. I had no idea that my trauma impacted my relationships as deeply as it had. I just, again, didn't know that I felt really anxious around people. It was just the way I always felt around people. So I sort of backed off, and I had a lot of kind of this around people. And once I got my brain to calm down, I felt a lot more comfortable and a lot safer. And now I'm in a great relationship and I have some really great friendships that my trauma had prevented me from having. So the thing about neurofeedback is typically it's very expensive. So you have to invest several thousands of dollars in, several, maybe 30, 40 sessions. So what I found was another tool that gets to the same result, which is to re-regulate your brain, to shift your brain from anxiety to a calmer state, or from a disorganized or distracted state to a focused state, and it's called Bellamy. And this is actually a headband that uses PEMF technology. It's called pulsed electric magnetic frequency or field technology. And what it does is there's several, actually I'll show you what it does. So I'm using it now and it's fabulous as far as helping me focus, as far as helping me sleep. I'm going to put it on right now. Hold on. So for example, I don't know if you can see these. Can you see these programs? Yeah. So it says improve sleep, anti-anxiety, concentrate.
Meditate, anti-stress, concentrate, and custom. Yeah.
Exactly. And so what I do is every morning when I work, I plug this in. And basically how it works is you just put it on like this. It goes at the back of your head and it pushes out a frequency that is in alignment with the frequency that you want to be in. So for example, if I want to be in a concentrate mode, so I've got it plugged into my phone.
Yeah.
I click on concentrate and it says 1 hour and I click 15. So you can see it's on. And what it does is it pushes out a frequency of about 11 hertz, which is the frequency of focus and frontal lobe activity. So, and I have totally noticed that the part of me that used to get kind of distracted and stuff like that is able to focus for several hours now. And the other thing is I put this on during the news right now, anti-anxiety.
Yeah.
And it really does help with that too. So this has been something that's been really helpful for me. And it's been a great tool. And again, it's based on the frequency following response. So meaning that, like when you're listening to upbeat music, how you naturally want to get up and dance and
right.
tap your foot or whatever. It's the same principle. The brain, it picks up the frequency of alpha, which is the alpha frequency is the frequency that makes you be able to focus. And actually alpha and low beta, I know this because I used to do neurofeedback, but anyway, so it shifts your brain into that frequency, because typically when we're anxious, we're in really high, fast frequencies that make us anxious. So this shifts your brain from, da 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 da, and then it shifts your state.
Is it electrical? Is there like a pulse, an electrical pulse?
It's an electromagnetic pulse. It's super low frequency. It's actually puts as much, it's basically as much energy as a headphone, like listening to music. So it's extremely safe. PEMF technology has been approved by like the FDA. They used it in NASA. So yeah, it's a great thing. And I've been using it with my clients. And again, since a lot of people can't, afford neurofeedback, and I love it. And again, the cool thing about training your brain. So this is a brain hygiene tool. It's a neurofeedback tool, really. The thing about training your brain is that when you continuously train it to a certain frequency for a certain task, it ends up rewiring. You probably heard the term, what wires together, fires together, wires together. And so eventually it holds. And so I was using this a lot for sleep. It has a sleep program on it too, because a lot of us with trauma have a difficult time sleeping because our nervous systems are jacked up from being in fight, flight, freeze. And so this helps calm it down. Eventually it holds at that lower frequency because it trains your brain. Anyway, so this is a great tool, and so,
I love it. And I've talked about a lot on the podcast about brain plasticity and how, so it's creating a habitual pattern, which is amazing because it does rewire the brain, and our brains are plastic, meaning malleable, changeable.
Exactly.
That to me just illuminates hope across the entire trauma spectrum.
Well, exactly. And so, yeah, like as a result of my brain training, I was able to reduce my meds by 50%. I don't have to use meds to sleep. I was on, like antidepressants, by reduce those by 50%. I was able to get off of sleep medication, and I'm just calmer. I'm able to be
Yeah,
in more relationships because of it.
that's
So
awesome.
yeah,
Wonderful. So how well, first, anything else that you wanted to touch upon before we close out?
let me take this off for a second. Just really, um, well, I think the main thing is to recognize that this is a time in a limited time that we're going to be in this. So I think it's important to look at the big picture too and recognize that this too shall pass. Right now, it's really painful, and we're in the thick of it.
Right.
And so the best thing we can do is take care of ourselves, feel, do what we can to feel safe, do what we can to feel regulated with our brains. In other words, you know, don't overwhelm yourself with news or negative people. Set boundaries, protect yourself, use tools for brain health. In fact, the Bellamy, just so you know, is offering their product at cost right now. So it's only $79. And people, I'm actually on their advisory board. So if anybody would like to take advantage of that, they can reach out to me at mary@marygcoach.com, or find other things, yoga. Uh, Unfortunately, you can't. I'm not sure if you can do EMDR therapy
Oh, yeah,
remotely.
that's a really good
I'm not sure,
question.
but reach out for brain support. Because again, it's not just talk therapy that's going to get you through this. That's helped me tremendously, but we do need things that are going to really calm our brain and nervous systems down, because the trauma lives in the brain and the nervous system as well as the psyche. And reach and just stay connected to your friends and family in real time conversations. That's really the
Yeah.
important thing. And whenever you see something on the news that upsets you, just turn it off. You don't have to keep listening. And the other thing I found is Googling what information I do want to listen to is a lot more helpful than having to sit through 20 or 30 minutes of stuff that just upsets me.
Right.
You know
Right.
what I mean? And
Yeah.
that we will get through this together.
Yeah.
And to me, it's the wake up call about how we all really are connected, and that we all do need each other to survive and thrive. And so, there are no boundaries or borders or political parties that can shield us from this. This is a collective one
Yeah.
thing that we can all, use to connect more deeply as a one species, one planet, one world. So
Beautiful. And just for listeners' sake, when you mentioned EMDR, and I've talked on the podcast, but for these Facebook
mm-hmm.
Lives, for anyone new turning in, I had utilized EMDR for 4 years, and it's eye movement desensitization,
Yes,
reprocessing therapy.
absolutely.
Changed my
Absolutely.
life altering.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, it was amazing.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
yeah,
So you use the stuff that we've got to get our brains healed, as well as our mind and
yeah,
our spirits. So,
yeah.
and also if you want to check out anything on my website, it's at Mary Giuliani, GIULIANI.net. There's all kinds of blog posts, and I ran a Mary Giuliani live talk show where I interviewed many people on healing and transformation, many trauma based interviews. I also have some music that I recorded in the 90s that I posted
Beautiful
up.
music that I have
Thank
and
you.
listen to. Yes.
Thank you. Yeah. So, reach out for support. Take advantage of all the free webinars right now. There's a ton of people doing free webinars. Upskill, learn how to be a podcaster, learn how to
Yeah.
use Office, there's so many opportunities. So instead of staying stuck in the fight, flight, freeze, get into the proactive versus the reactive, and create a corrective experience for yourself.
Yeah. We told our 13-year-old daughter last night, we sat at dinner and we said, all right, come up with 5 new things you want to learn. Because
Perfect.
she's a great photographer, but we said we could take a YouTube class together with our camera and learn how to photograph things we haven't photographed yet, and like small little flowers or whatever it is. And
Right.
so I said, we have a ukulele in the basement that you played when you were, 9. Let's take some
Exactly.
ukulele lessons on.
Exactly. exactly.
Yeah.
It's just, and I think the message I want to leave with people that have endured trauma as a child, and that are adults or that are still children, is that, many of us just sort of barely survive, but we can thrive
Yeah.
with the right support. And like the work you're doing is so beautiful, and I'm so grateful to all
Thank
of the ways you're sharing so many wonderful resources. And but with the right support, we can have post-traumatic growth and be that light for other people. And that's what my goal is to help trauma survivors thrive. And that's what I do with coaching and all of the support that I can help. So
Well, thank you for that, and
welcome.
thank you for, I mean, for the amazing work you're doing as well, and for shining that light of hope and helping take people by the hand and guiding them along this healing journey. And
Great.
yeah,
Well,
beautiful.
thank you too, Terry. And shout out to everybody.
All
Stay
right,
safe.
everyone,
And
thanks
yeah,
for listening in today. And remember, until next time, be gentle with yourself. All right, bye-bye.
bye.